Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Not Another Formula One podcast. We are at the Canadian Grand Prix, Canadians. Boo. Update from last week's podcast. Certified OVHO, Lance Stroll, actually is attending this Grand Prix, his home Grand Prix. I heard some stat that he scored at every Canadian Grand Prix except for 2018. And then all those years where there wasn't a Canadian Grand Prix. But anywho, he returned somehow, probably saving face for Aston Martin. Very terrible in press conferences. He was hiding his arm a lot, or his wrist rather. So Felipe Drugovich will not be getting the seat once again. I don't feel like he'll ever get a spot in this team besides reserve driver. Poor guy. Just gonna jump straight into qualifying. Q1, Alex Albon's car decides to undress itself. I think the session got red flagged, and somehow they got it back together. I guess it's just the engine cover, bits of carbon fiber. I'm sure they had a different engine cover to slap on there. But he gets back on track and gets into Q2. Not getting into Q2, Carlos Sainz, because of impeding from Isaac Hadjar. Major impeding, apparently, which it was. This takes Isaac's P9 and turns it into a P12. George Russell practically dominated all three quali sessions. I think he got the top spot in all three. Yuki qualified P11, but then took a 10-place grid penalty for some Parc Ferme changes. I don't even know what he changed, but of course Yuki starting from the back once again. It was made present that Liam Lawson and Pierre Gasly would start from the pit lane. Pierre Gasly killed a rabbit this week, such as all the wildlife that tends to run onto the track in Montreal, or wherever this track is. I don't really care. Too much wildlife. Can they not just I guess it's not really possible. There's a whole ass lake in between the racetrack, a lot of trees. You're not really gonna stop things like rabbits and groundhogs and all that shit. But ayo, RIP to that little homie rabbit. Lando Norris couldn't seem to get it together during qualifying, or Q3 rather. I think his best lap was 8/10 behind Oscar Piastri. I think he had a wobble, but best he could do was P7. Leclerc was on for a goodie, but Isaac Hadjar strikes again and impedes him as well. I don't know if it was maybe as bad as what he did to Sainz, but Leclerc was pissed, as he should be. Lols. Not pissed, George Russell having a mega lap to take pole, I think on the medium tire, by 0.16 of a second ahead of Max Verstappen, who had a good lap himself. And then, of course, Oscar Piastri qualifies third. And Kimi Antonelli fourth. I didn't know, excuse me, very late into the season to be noticing this. Mercedes is sponsored by Adidas. Now, as a guy that wears a lot of Adidas, it's pretty rad. I still don't like Mercedes, though. Now, all the talk between Saturday qualifying and Sunday race start was what was going to happen at turn 1 between Osama bin Russell and Max Verstappen. Getting into the race here, safe to say we were highly disappointed. by what took place. Max had a slower start, definitely. I think by like maybe 600ths of a second or some shit like that. But at the same time, he was also just, he knew if he couldn't get it into turn 1 and 2, it's just damage limitation from then on out. Because Kimi Antonelli got a big jump on Oscar Piastri out of the exit of turn 2 into turn 3, which set him up for the whole entire race. Good for that kid. So all the pack follows through, and by turn 8, Alex Albon decides to go rallying. Quite similar to maybe some Dukes of Hazzard. Just a good old boy. Never mean no harm. Just fucking really yeehawed through the grass. And came out. He's so lucky. There was nobody on the other side of that grass for him to run into. Pretty impressive off-roading there from Alex. I know I've done that move once or twice on the F1 game. Speaking of Alex, just a couple laps later, he gets a message from his engineer talking about some power unit issues. Apparently not as bad as Spain, but spoiler alert, he retires later on. Tough. Now, a lot of the top of the pack were on... Oh, sorry. A lot of the top of the pack were on medium tires. And within the exception of Lando and Charles. It wasn't like maybe the best at the start, heavy fuel, hard tires. And apparently these C6 mediums are pretty much the soft tires. So, of course, Max decides to pit on like lap 11 because his tires were just going to shit. Charles on these hards though was insisting he was maybe gonna go for a one stop. He was saying, I want plan C. But Ferrari, being Ferrari, always plan B. There's nothing but plan B. Which makes me wonder why that's maybe their problem. They've never had a plan A. Their plan A, I guess, never works. What is their plan A? If they always want to be plan B and Charles wants to go plan C. I don't know. But yeah, Max pits lap 11. Kimi and George pit to cover him. George still leading in a way, kind of. Lewis Hamilton, funny enough, the only vegan animal rights supporter on the F1 grid, hits a groundhog. Devastated. R.I.P. little homie. How about a moment of silence for both the groundhog and the rabbit? Anyways, Lewis has damage now that apparently was causing him to be down like 5/10 a lap, which is awful because he quite literally was like 5/10 slower than Charles. But yeah, everybody kind of pits at this point. Really boring ass race. I don't know, besides that ridiculous turn 10 move from Sainz, where he just crept in on, what was it? Gabby Bortoletto and Isaac Hadjar. Anywho, the race goes on till about, lap 40-ish, and everybody pits again. And this is when the actually good part happens. There's a huge chase down for third position. Kimi Antonelli very maturely holding off Oscar Piastri. But the traffic that they run into allowed Lando to pretty much catch up to Oscar. Which is where the downfall begins, really. so far this year, I don't think the McLarens have ever had to truly fight each other. But really, there was no reason to fight for this. I mean, their car hadn't been very great all weekend. Neither driver had been particularly confident this weekend. The constructors, doesn't matter at this point. They already got it. So who cares? There was really no need for them to jostle position. But of course, they're teammates who won in a championship fight. They're going at it. DRS. Lando can't really get there. He gets there, but he doesn't really get there. And then he makes a move. A move that was never there. Lando Norris crashes into the back of Oscar Piastri. And, my partner, girlfriend, said something to me along the lines of, Lando really is his own worst enemy. Which kind of had me thinking, like, it's no surprise to me I am an worst enemy. 'Cause every now and then I ram straight into Piastri. I mean, God forbid a white boy catches a little toe from his teammate. But, no, the gap was never there, dude. Please tell me why. My car is in the barriers. And I went for a gap that was never there. Checked my title hopes last night. And they're gone. Gone. I'm sorry. But it's too funny. Dude, Lando really is his own worst enemy. He can't seem to not manage to make his own life difficult. Tough. It's hilarious because just like 2 laps prior, maybe, the McLaren pit wall was talking to Lando on some shit like, hey, Lando, if there was a safety car right now, it'd be a great pit stop and you'd be able to attack the top runners and whatnot. And he was like, hell yeah, I'll take it. And then he causes the safety car. Why? I mean, if you're gonna hit your teammate, at least take him out as well. But, he apologized for it immediately, which is cool, I guess. Definitely saved a lot of media talk. I'm sure McLaren's PR team, or maybe even Zach Brown himself, has probably told both the boys, like, hey, if you idiots ever clash on track, you better not blame the other. You better fess up to it. Because the last thing McLaren needs right now when both their drivers are fighting for a championship is for them to be bickering fucking bitches. But yeah, safety car comes out, lap 76. And because Lando was right on the pit straight, the whole safety car parade had to go through the pit lane. And towards the end of it, this is like the last 3 laps of the race, so I kind of knew this was gonna end under the safety car. Boo. But right before that, George absolutely brake checks Max. I mean, you look at the onboards, and George is like peeking in his right mirror, and he knew it was like the second to the last lap, because he probably couldn't pull that shit on the very last lap, because he needed time to bitch to the stewards about it. But yeah, he brake checks Max to try to get Max to get a penalty for overtaking under the safety car, as George would do. Very cheeky as hell. And, from all of this, Max still, even after, the shit that happened in Spain, Max was still very cool and, composed around George, all handshakes and smiles. God knows what he's really thinking. But yeah, after he brake checked him, Max did overtake just a little bit, but of course, the stewards see through that shit. So yes, the race actually does end under the safety car. Boo. And here are your top 10 finishers of the 2025 Canadian Grand Prix. In first place, George Russell driving a, kind of flawless pull-to-flag victory. His fourth win ever. And Mercedes' first of 2025. Max Verstappen in second, finishing 0.228 seconds behind Russell, which is apparently the tightest finishing margin since Australia 2023. But considering it was under the safety car, it's not really a great statistic. A great statistic, Kimi Antonelli getting his first podium, becoming the third youngest podium finisher in Formula One at the age of 18 years and 294 days. Or some shit like that. Becoming the first Italian driver on the podium since Jarno Trulli in 2009, which is a wild stat. Realistically, you'd think, with Ferrari and all of their power units that they supply throughout the rest of the grid, you'd think there'd be more Italians on the grid, right? And this Italian doesn't even drive a Ferrari-powered car. He drives a German-powered car, which is also fucked up because Ferrari's greatest ever driver is a German. And their current drivers are a Monegasque and a Brit. I don't understand Ferrari. I really don't. Why don't they promote? Are there just not that many great young Italian kids besides Kimi these days? We had Antonio Giovinazzi, but he drove a shitbox of an Alfa Romeo for a couple of years alongside, Kimi Räikkönen. Another Kimi. Anyways, Oscar Piastri in fourth, extending his championship lead at 198 points. Finishing fourth, not on his, probably the best he did qualify third. And this actually snaps his streak of 8 or 9 consecutive podiums for McLaren, which would have broken Lewis Hamilton's 2007 or 2008 record, something like that. I don't know. But Charles Leclerc comes home fifth. Nothing much to say there. Probably the best he could. It wasn't his race. It wasn't his weekend. Especially after he binned it in free practice. Didn't have much practice time. Had his best lap impeded by Hadjar. Tough day for both the Ferraris because Lewis Hamilton finished sixth. That not too bad for being half a second slower a lap than your teammate. But sadly, this is his first season without a podium after 10 races. That's heartbreaking if you're a Lewis Hamilton fan, isn't it? Yes, he won the sprint race in China, but we don't really count that, homie. We do count, and we do stand Fernando Alonso in seventh. This was Aston Martin's first consecutive point-scoring finish of the season. They've had a really shit season so far. Now, it's not a lot of points Alonso has been scoring, but they'll take it. They'll definitely take it. Because Lance Stroll is shit. Got a penalty for forcing Pierre Gasly off the track. Tough. Anywho, in 8th place, Nico Hülkenberg. His third points finish of the season. Now, if you'd have told me at the beginning of the year, when I made that little prediction short, that Nico would get 3 points finishes in this tractor of a car, I'd have laughed. But I mean, he's really out driving the shit out of that car. I mean, the car is actually improving. Apparently, they had upgrades in Spain, which even Gabby Bortoleto, he's been kind of getting up there. He's just not as good as Nico in qualifying, but we even saw in his time at Haas that Nico can really put a lap together on Saturday and get into the top 10. Now, Haas's problem was that like they absolutely chewed through their tires. Thus, you just fall away in the race. But this was a great result, and apparently the first time this team in particular has scored in back-to-back races since 2022. Wild stat. Esteban Ocon finished 9th. Career best result in Montreal. And for Haas's 200th Grand Prix, which of course they had to make a special livery for. I mean, Haas is practically becoming McLaren with these little one-off liveries. But that's like their third or fourth of the season so far. Finishing with 1 point, only because his former teammate Lando crashed himself out. Carlos Sainz. Now, if you'd have told him at the beginning of the race that he'd go from 16th or 15th to 10th, he even said himself he wasn't thinking that. So yeah, congratulations to Williams. Still scoring points. I know they have been rather lucky around Montreal in the last couple seasons. I mean, their car is very slippery on the straights, which kind of takes me to my predictions. Well, I'm going to get into my predictions for the next race after I get my predictions from this race. So I said a couple weeks ago for Canada that only one McLaren will finish on the podium. No, Oscar finished 4th. My second prediction was that one McLaren will have a bad weekend. Guess who? Please tell me why. Sorry. Third prediction, I said rain will make things interesting. There was no rain. I'm just dumb. But yes. In 2 weeks, we're going to be in the Alpine forest of Spielberg-Styria for the Austrian Grand Prix, home of the Red Bull Ring. And now here's my predictions for it. As I was trying to get to earlier with Carlos Sainz, the Williams, being a slippery car, I think Williams can get a top 5. Either Alex or Carlos, if they can have a good qualifying session. Top 5, maybe on the skirts of a podium, if not a third. It really depends on what happens. Second prediction, I think Max will win his team's home Grand Prix. If not, maybe at least second. That's not really a prediction, just to say, oh, he might get first. He's going to get first, or he might get second. But that's kind of the thing. I don't think he'll get third. My third prediction is that Lando will fail again. He kind of blew it last year around this track, kind of trying to intertangle with Max, and left him stumbling back to the pit lane. But that is all for this week. I want to give a big shout out to Chet Hanks. The CDC has just declared a white boy summer. And, God forbid a white boy catch a vibe. Shout out to Chet Hanks. And shout out to you, listener, for listening to this podcast, the Not Another Formula One podcast. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe. Make this channel grow. Bye-bye.